guys. So if you're just starting your jiu-jitsu journey, there's the big three movements is what we call them, or the big three positions rather. So if you're trying to collect techniques and build a little bit of a game plan on what you should be doing as a brand new white belt, I would suggest doing this. So if my partner comes into what's called close guard, or the best simile of close guard that we can do, if you can learn a couple of things to do from the top position and the bottom position in each of these three big moves here, you can start collecting some really good evidence-based techniques to perform on your partners when you're drilling or sparring. So number one, for guard, I'll try to give you 2 or 3 things from each position. Number one, from guard or close guard, I don't want them to break my posture. So if possible, I want to try to be in a position where I get or maintain my top posture like this. I don't want to be sitting with my knees so close together where I'm kind of off balance and my partner may be able to sweep me. I want to try to leave my knees on either side of my opponent's, I should say partner, on either side of my partner's hips, and just putting a little bit of pressure there, kind of so their hips sit in there and it's a little bit harder for them to shrimp out to one side or the other if they open up their guard. So tip number one is try to get or maintain top posture. Tip number 2 from guard, like this, is if you're on the bottom, break that top posture. And a really safe way to do that is to grip onto the lapels and try to use your legs to pull in, and your arms. So one tip for that is, you'll notice that Sable didn't grab straight on, meaning that her hand didn't come straight to the lapel on either side like this. This would be a really tough way to start breaking posture because now it's strength for strength, and my angle is a little bit better than her angle. What she had chosen to do was take her hand and come to a cross grip. So now when she pulls, there's just a little bit of torsion to try to break that down. Now, if you want to try to maintain a broken posture here, what you can do is maintain your cross grip on the lapel and take the other hand and throw it around the neck, holding here. And now she's basically at the end of the lever holding my head and holding my body down to keep my posture broken. Quick reiteration. Trying to get or maintain my top posture here. My hips are back a little bit. My knees are holding into the hips here. Her main tip is to try to break that top posture. Now, maybe the last simplified tip here is it's really, really hard to break or escape close guard if someone breaks my posture. If I get here, now my hand's coming all the way back like this in a very dangerous position. She could Kimura me, or do leg attacks, or possibly even sweep me. So just try to keep this concept. If you're gonna start trying to learn how to break close guard, do it from top posture or high posture. Into our second of the 3 big positions, side control. So if we've passed guard, it's likely that you're gonna end up in side control, cross side mount. There's about 1,000 different names for this position. All that I really care is that you end up understanding how to control a little bit from here, and also understanding how to use your hips a little bit. So what I want to try to do here is, again, not leave my knees together. I want to have one knee down by my partner's hip and the other knee up by their armpit. So I have a little bit of width in my stance here, so I have a little bit of base. There's a number of different variations where we could put our hands in different control positions here from cross-side. But what I'm going to do for kind of the nucleus of this is I'm going to get what's known as a cross face, which can be somewhat ambiguous in the sense a crossface could be on top of the head, pushing the head down. The one I'm talking about is going to be under the neck. And for this example, I want to take away all the space by bringing my bicep right up to her neck and controlling with a little bit of shoulder pressure. On the opposite side, I'm going to take my hand underneath and grip palm to palm so that whatever hand is under my partner's neck is a little bit higher. So not here, just a little bit higher. Squeeze your elbows together, and then squeeze your elbows towards your knees, and you can put a little bit of chest pressure, but mostly with this type of cross-side position, we're trying to squeeze together to immobilize the shoulder line, and maybe a little bit of control over the hip. So a couple of details here for cross-side. When you're doing that, don't let it be loose. There's tip number 1. If you're the person that's on the bottom and you want to escape cross-side, there's a number of ways that we can escape, depending on how our partner is controlling us, but try to never lay flat. So Sable's tip here would be to start trying to shrimp away and get your frames in. So she might get a knee in, she might get her elbow in, her low frame, and she might get her hand in for a high frame. So there's lots of tips for cross-side. Yeah, anyways. All right, guys, so now we're in full mount. And there's a bunch of iterations from full mount in the sense of you could have a low, medium, or high stance. You could rotate into technical mount or go into an S mount. Just like cross side, depending on what your opponent is doing, might mimic the movement that is best associated for you to do on the top. But we'll talk about having a low mount here. Pro about this position is that I can kind of hook my feet, not crossed like this yet, but I can kind of hook my feet in a V shape with my knees out and my feet much closer together under their hips or their butt. And what that does is stops them from being able to shrimp as efficiently. So that's the pro. The con is that if I'm this low, I'm right over top of the epicenter of the strength of their bridge. So her hips are going to be the strongest point. If she bridges right now, she can move me. And she's about 76 pounds. So if she can bridge me up, that's a problem. So if I start scooching my mount up incrementally like this while I'm fighting my partner, I can get away from that strongest point of the bridge. So again, pro, keeping the feet in, stops them from shrimping as easily. Con, I'm right over the epicenter of their bridge point, I should say. So that's one really good tip. Tip number 2 is that don't let your knees come apart. So if I'm here, I want to keep the knees in fairly tight while I'm sparring. If I leave my knees out like this, they can wedge their elbow in and start escaping on either side. But just in general, if I have both my knees out like this, I'm producing poor technique for myself to hold the structure or the position. And they really like it because it's easy for them to start their escape strategies. Tip number 3 would be this. If I'm going to break my posture on my own accord, so that means that she didn't try to break it for me, I want to try to tie up an arm or a neck or possibly even both. So if I'm going to get bridged, and let's say I'm trying to sell this really dramatically, so she bridges, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm going to fall. I could end up hanging onto an arm and possibly getting a neck, so I'm exposing an arm away from the body and holding onto the head. Now, every one of these position changes, advancements, whatever, it's going to take some practice. And if you're maybe the smaller person in your club, try to work with different sized people. Actually, the same goes whether you're medium or big size or whatever. If I work with different sized people here, what's cool about that is that they usually have way more mobility than me, and they can get their elbows in, or they can bridge or shrimp away. And I find it very, very tough to not just use my weight or my strength to try to technically hold them with my strategy. So it's a really good lesson if you get to work with people of different sizes to try to practice these different augmentations to the technique or to the position, and try to see if you can still maintain or hold. And then if you have problems holding those positions, then you can start asking your coach and really getting some of the fine details to hold them. Maybe I'll say it this way. In conclusion, if you know 2 or 3 things from guard, 2 or 3 things from crossbody, and 2 or 3 things from mount, and then double that by knowing 2 or 3 things from top and bottom, you've just exploded your amount of knowledge. Now take it to some light rolling or even some light sparring and try to apply that knowledge so that you have some practical jiu-jitsu, not some fancy techniques that you're not really sure how to apply just yet. And then you can watch your jiu-jitsu start to excel because you have good foundational properties in every one of these techniques. Any questions or comments, please put them below. We'd be happy to try and answer.